Hi, I'm Samantha Reed, and 10 years ago, my parents told me I was dead to the mover dinner at a table they paid for, under lights I never fit beneath. I left with a camera, $800, and no promise I'd ever come back. Now here's the twist. Last Thanksgiving, they walked into a beach house they thought they'd rented for their exclusive family reunion, not realizing it was mine. The house I built from the life they said would never work. They looked me in the eye for the first time in a decade while standing on my floors, eating at my table surrounded by my work, and all I said was, "Enjoy your stay." Wait, before we go any further, where are you watching from? They always told me I was too dramatic, sensitive, impractical, that my dreams would fold like cheap paper under the weight of reality. But that morning, as I stood frozen in the hallway of my own home, watching my parents cross the threshold with the confidence of ownership, I realized something much colder. They never thought I'd make it. Not just in the financial sense, but in any sense at all. It was the week of Thanksgiving, the one time of year the Reed family gathered in force, dressed in expensive knits and vintage jewelry, passing around heirloom recipes as if love could be baked back into bloodlines. And this year, they'd rented a sprawling beach house in the Hamptons to celebrate 4 decades of my parents' Mariaja legacy of real estate, reputation, and repression. A home that, to their knowledge, belonged to some anonymous owner too wealthy to care who stayed there for the holidays. That anonymous owner was me. I had watched it unfold from the moment their black Escalade pulled into the drive, my father stepping out with his habitual air of inspection, running his hand along the stone facade like a man appraising an investment property. My mother, in cashmere and pearls, issued instructions about luggage, lighting, and which guest room had the better view. They moved with ease through my space, unaware, like they had every right. I didn't say a word. Not yet. I let them walk past framed prints I had taken, artwork I had selected, colors I had agonized over. I watched through the quiet hum of my security system as they rearranged the floral centerpiece in the dining room, like it somehow offended their aesthetic. I had returned from a shoot 2 days early. I was supposed to be out of town, so they thought. The property manager didn't tell them otherwise. That was part of the design. My name was never attached to the listings. Just the house. Just the rate. Just the view. But this morning I hadn't left. Something in me refused. Maybe it was the post my mother made on Facebook the night before. Just a simple Thanksgiving, nothing extravagant, just the people who matter most. A caption under a photo of the ocean me ocean the horizon cutting across the background like a quiet truth no one saw coming. They hadn't invited me, again, not even a perfunctory email, not a group text, not a lie. 10 years, 10 holidays, 10 birthdays. I'd been cut out with the same precision they used for contracts and legal drafts. A clean line through the middle child, the inconvenient one, the girl with the camera and no pedigree, the one who dared to say, "I want something else." And now here they were. In my house, laughing in my kitchen, setting out plates like it belonged to them. I watched my younger sister Amanda set out monogrammed napkins, her diamond wedding ring catching the light. She hadn't spoken to me in nearly a decade, not since I declined the invitation to her rehearsal dinner, an invitation I never received. My brother Jonathan adjusted the thermostat like he owned the climate, making calls on speakerphone, negotiating something aggressive and vague. His law firm had merged recently, or fractured, I wasn't sure. He didn't say much the last time we met for coffee, years ago, except that I looked tired and thin. He didn't ask why. I knew every inch of that house, every flaw and every feature. I had restored it with the inheritance Lisa Montgomery left Memmy, late client, mentor, and friend. She had once stood in that very foyer and said, "This house deserves to belong to someone who actually sees it." And I did. I saw everything, including the moment my mother placed the family photo on the console table loan from a ski trip in Vermont years ago. I was in that photo, just barely, smiling with my arms wrapped around Zoe, our cousin's daughter, who had always followed me like a shadow. My mother looked at the frame for a long beat, then adjusted it so that another, newer photo blocked mine from view. And I thought, there it is, still erasing me, even here. I could have walked away. I considered it, packed a bag, left quietly, let them enjoy their delusion, let them believe they had rented a perfect, untouched holiday dream. But something in me settled hard and cold and clear. Not this time. This time, they would see. I didn't plan a speech. There would be no yelling, no scene, no cathartic meltdown that could be spun into, "See? This is why she's like that." Number I would not raise my voice. I didn't need to. The house would speak for me. They were setting the table when I stepped into the doorway. Leather shoes on hardwood. No warning. Just the sound of heels they didn't recognize. 12 heads turned. My father looked up first. His face drained color so fast I thought he might collapse. My mother's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Amanda froze mid-pour. Jonathan set his phone down slowly. I stood there, dressed in black. Simple, clean, sharp lines. The kind of outfit that photographs well in natural light and under pressure. "Hello," I said. My voice did not tremble. They said nothing. "I hope you're enjoying your stay." Amanda was the first to find her voice. "What are you doing here?" she asked, tone sharp. "How did you even get in?" He tilted my head. "I live here." A silence fell so heavy it seemed to weigh down the entire structure. "This is my house." My mother blinked. "That's not possible," my father said, trying to stand. "We rented this from Hampton Luxury Estates." "You did," I replied evenly. "They manage the property when I travel." They stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. I took a step forward. Not aggressive, just sure. I decided not to go away this week after all. No one moved. Zoe, now a teenager, was the only one who reacted. She rushed forward and hugged me with a suddenness that cracked something in my ribs. "I knew you'd come back," she whispered. I hugged her back. The others? Still frozen, uncertain how to engage with the ghost they had buried. They thought I had nothing. They thought I'd disappeared. They thought silence meant surrender. They were wrong. Have you ever had to make someone see you not with rage, but with undeniable presence? Press 1 if you have, 2 if you're still building the moment. This was mine. And I wasn't going anywhere. I used to think that silence was passive, a lack of response, an empty space between two events. But I was wrong. Silence in the Reed family was never passive. It was intentional, measured, sharpened like a tool or a weapon. After that Thanksgiving, I couldn't sleep. The moment passed, but its weight lingered. I lay awake in the guest house, eyes fixed on the ceiling, listening to the waves crash just beyond the dunes. My house, my land. And still, somehow, not quite mine when they were inside it. Their presence had pulled me backward into memories I had folded away like brittle photographs. I hadn't wanted to remember. But memory is not something you choose, it chooses you. Growing up as the middle child in the Reed family was like living between parentheses. Everything important happened around me. Jonathan was the golden boy, Ivy League, law review. Executive presence by age 16. Amanda was the classic beauty, delicate and destined. She married young, of course, to someone appropriately bland and wealthy. Their union made sense in the same way that furniture catalogs do. Everything matched, everything staged. And then there was me. From the time I was 7, I carried a camera. Not a real one at first. Just a plastic disposable gifted by my grandmother, the only person who ever encouraged anything outside the family script. I took pictures of everything: light on windowsills, shadows on staircases, Marta, the housekeeper's secret smile when she thought no one noticed. I saw details others missed. I thought that meant something. My mother disagreed. "Photography is a charming hobby," she would say, adjusting the same vase she had adjusted every morning for 20 years. "But you need a real skill, Samantha. One that builds something." My father never looked up from his newspaper when those conversations happened. But when college approached, he was very clear. Business, not art, he said. You're good with numbers, use them. So I did. I applied to Wharton and got in. He was proud. At least, proud enough to write the check. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that I also enrolled in elective courses at the art school across the street. I used my electives for light theory, darkroom process, portfolio development. I shot weddings on weekends for strangers who paid just enough to cover my film. At family dinners, I smiled when they talked about Jonathan's clerkship or Amanda's bridal fittings. I kept my double life quiet. I thought if I succeeded enough, they would accept who I was. Graduation night, I told them the truth. We were at a restaurant my father had chosen expensive, intimidating, full of leather and low lighting. I waited until the wine was poured and the waiter cleared the appetizers. Then I said it. I've decided not to take the offer from Grayson and Hunt. I've been accepted into a photography mentorship in New York, full-time. The silence that followed was not surprise. It was strategy. My mother's expression didn't change, just her voice. Lower, tighter. You're being impulsive. You don't throw away an entire education on a whim. My father simply exhaled and reached for his drink. It's not a whim, I said. I've been building toward this for years. Quietly, yes, but seriously, this is my path. He set his glass down with a soft click. If you walk away from this opportunity, he said, you do it alone. No support, no fallback, no contact. My mother nodded once, as if co-signing a legal agreement. We won't participate in your failure. It was not said with anger. It was worse than anger. It was certainty. 2 days later, I left with $800, a camera bag, and no forwarding address. Jonathan stood in the hallway while I packed. He didn't try to stop me. He didn't offer money or advice. Just said, they'll come around, without looking at me. Amanda didn't even come upstairs. That first year, I worked 16-hour days to afford rent in a Brooklyn apartment with peeling paint and shared plumbing. I served coffee to people who didn't look at me. I delivered edited photos at midnight for clients who didn't pay on time. I swallowed pride in paper cups, but I kept going. I built a portfolio, one grainy, unpaid gig at a time. On my first Christmas alone, I called the house. The line rang 10 times. No answer. No voicemail. On New Year's Eve, I tried again. Still nothing. I stopped after that. Jonathan texted on my birthday that year. Just a single line. Hope you're okay. No reply came when I responded. By the second year, the text stopped too. I learned from friends that Amanda had given birth. I learned from Google that my grandmother had passed away. Her obituary didn't mention me. The silence deepened. Not absence, erasure. My name, gone from stories, from photos, from the curated history they presented to the world. Still, I kept going, because I knew eventually that the life I was building would be my answer, not to win them back, but to prove that I never needed their blueprint to begin with. And maybe, just maybe, to one day walk back into their world and have them see what they refused to see before. Have you ever had to disappear just to finally become visible? Type 1 if you've felt that, type 2 if you're still finding the courage. Because that was me. Gone, but never finished. Erased, but never lost. Brooklyn in winter is cruel in ways people don't talk about. It's not just the cold, it's the loneliness that sets into your skin like damp air, the kind that creeps under doors and stays. I arrived with a camera bag, a suitcase of clothes, and exactly $800 left in my account. That money was supposed to last a month. It barely lasted 2 weeks. My first place was a shoebox room in an apartment I shared with 3 other women, none of whom I saw often. We passed each other like ghosts in the hallway, headphones in, eyes down, lives too heavy to share. The heater rattled, the walls were thin, there were mice. Still, it was mine, a start. A door I'd chosen for myself. I took whatever jobs I could find, barista by morning, server by night, Photos by luck, Craigslist gigs, usually, birthdays, family reunions, headshots for dating profiles. Nothing paid well, but I didn't care. Every hour with a camera in my hand was an hour I remembered who I was. There was a stretch of days I ate nothing but eggs and instant noodles. My coat ripped during a February snowstorm, and I couldn't afford a new one. I duct taped it from the inside and kept moving. My body adjusted to less. My spirit did not. On holidays, I walked the city alone. Christmas Eve, I sat in Bryant Park with a paper cup of coffee, watching couples ice skate under strings of white lights. It was beautiful in a way that hurt. On my birthday, I baked myself a single cupcake and lit a candle. I sang quietly. No one called. That silence was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. But I kept going. Because every shutter click was defiance. Every captured moment, proof of life. People assume that success is built in confidence. It's not. It's built in refusal. Refusing to stop. Refusing to shrink. Refusing to let their version of your story be the only one told. My break didn't come from luck. It came from desperation. A wedding photographer in Manhattan posted online his assistant had canceled last minute. 12-hour shift, $100, cash. I responded within 5 minutes, showed up in 30, wore black, and stayed quiet. I anticipated everything he needed. Battery changes, lens swaps, lighting adjustments. At 2 a.m., while we packed up his car in the cold, he looked at me and said, "You've done this before." I shook my head. Number, but I've watched enough to know what matters. His name was Garrett Reynolds. He wasn't warm, but he was sharp. A man who respected hunger more than credentials. He called me the next day, not with praise, but with another job. Saturday. Same place. Bring your gear. Don't be late. That was it. No compliments. No hand-holding. Just opportunity. I worked with him for 6 months. Second shooter, lighting assistant, business apprentice. Garrett didn't believe in soft landings. He believed in systems, contracts, efficiency. Talent is cheap, he used to say. Reliability is gold. I listened, took notes, watched how he negotiated with clients, how he priced not just time but vision. He taught me how to write invoices, how to manage edits, how to upsell. But most of all, he taught me how to think like a business, not just a girl with a dream. One day, while reviewing my growing portfolio, he said, "You want steady work? Real money? Weddings are emotional. Real estate pays rent." He connected me to a realtor who needed photos for a small brownstone in Queens. The listing was modest, but I treated it like an Architectural Digest spread. Natural light, composition, clean lines. I shot it like it mattered, because to me, it did. That realtor referred me to 3 others, then 5, then 10. Within 6 months, I had clients waiting 2 weeks for shoots. I got my own insurance, registered my business as an LLC, named it Coastal Vision, my brand, my eye. By year 2, I moved out of the shared apartment and into a studio near Prospect Park. It was tiny, but I could breathe there. No mice, no headphones in hallways, just quiet mornings and editing sessions that lasted until dawn. Then came the call. A luxury listing on the Upper West Side. 4.2 million. I walked in with my equipment, trying not to look impressed. The owner, a woman in her 60s with sharp cheekbones and silver hair, watched me work from the corner. She didn't interrupt, just observed. After the shoot, she said, "You see angles others miss. You find dignity in rooms most people overlook." Her name was Lisa Montgomery. Lisa hired me again the next week. Then again. By the 4th time, she started asking questions not about my work, but about my life. I told her pieces. Carefully, she listened. She told me she'd built her publishing company from scratch, that no one believed in her either. I wasn't expected to succeed, she said. So I did. When Lisa got sick, I didn't hear it from her directly. Her assistant emailed me to cancel a shoot. A week later, Lisa called me herself, her voice thinner, slower. "I want you to do something for me," she said. "A final project. I want to document all the places I've loved. Aspen, San Francisco, Montauk, especially the beach house." I did. We spent 2 months traveling. She smiled more during that time than in all the shoots before. She laughed too. It wasn't about the houses. It was about memory, about anchoring her life in something real. When she passed away, I stood at the back of her funeral. Her children didn't notice me. They never had. 3 weeks later, I was called to her lawyer's office. He handed me a manila folder. "Lisa left you something," he said. Inside was a deed, the beach house, along with a maintenance fund for 5 years. I stared at the paper. There must be a mistake. He handed me a letter. It read, "Samantha, you understand beauty in ways my family never will. Make this house your own, and more importantly, make it work for you." That night, I walked through the empty house alone. Every room hummed with possibility. It didn't feel like luck. It felt like recognition. I turned the guest house into a studio, took fewer weddings, focused on luxury clients, hired 2 assistants, then 3. I opened an office in Manhattan. My work appeared in Elle Decor, Vogue Living, and the Wall Street Journal. By 28, I had 6 employees, recurring contracts, and a reputation. Not as a Reed, as Reed Photography. No one from my family ever reached out, but I stopped needing them to. Have you ever taken scraps and turned them into something no one saw coming? Press 1 if you have. Press 2 if you're still gathering the pieces. They thought I left with nothing, but I was building everything. Silently, deliberately, one frame at a time. Some houses feel temporary the moment you walk in. Staged furniture, sterile lighting, a faint scent of lemon cleaner masking years of disuse. They feel like they're waiting for someone else to belong there. But this one was different. The first time I stepped into Lisa Montgomery's beach house, it felt like a memory I hadn't lived yet. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Atlantic like a painting. Wooden beams stretched across a vaulted ceiling. The air smelled faintly of salt, cedar, and something older, like time had settled in and made peace with itself. The kitchen was worn, but warm. The light moved across the floors as if it knew exactly where it was going. I knew I would never afford a place like this. I wasn't even looking for it. I was just there to take pictures. A listing shoot. Nothing more. But even then, something shifted. Lisa stood quietly in the corner that day, watching me work. She didn't ask questions. She didn't offer suggestions. She just observed, arms crossed, expression unreadable. When I packed up, she said, almost offhand, "You see more than most people. Not just the room, the story." I thanked her, unsure how to respond. I had learned not to mistake attention for affection, not to read into compliments that could disappear by the next appointment. But she called me again the next week, then again, then every week, for 6 months. We photographed her properties in Manhattan, Aspen, and San Francisco. She trusted me with every space, trusted my eye, trusted my presence, and eventually she trusted me with the truth. The cancer was advanced. She didn't say it directly. She didn't have to. Her energy changed. The pace of her instructions slowed. Her sentences stretched longer, as if buying time with every word. One afternoon in Montauk, she said, "They hate this house. My children. Too far from the city. Too many stairs. Too much sand." She said it without bitterness, just a quiet resignation. But this was the first home I bought with my own money. It mattered. I nodded. I understood. Some places hold our turning points. Some places carry our fight. When Lisa died, I wasn't on the guest list. I showed up anyway. Stood at the back of the cathedral in black, camera left at home, hands folded. Her children greeted guests like hosts at a corporate gala. Not once did they acknowledge me. I didn't expect them to. Grief doesn't always recognize loyalty. 3 weeks later, I received a call from her attorney. She left you something, he said. I thought maybe it was a book, a photo, a note, something small and symbolic. Closure. I almost didn't go, but something in his voice told me I should. The office was sleek and cold. He didn't offer condolences, just slid a folder across the desk. This deed is for the Montauk property, he said, along with a 5-year maintenance fund. I blinked. Excuse me? He pushed the folder closer. She wanted you to have it, said you'd know what to do with it. I opened the folder with shaking hands, her handwriting on a cream envelope. Inside, Samantha, this house deserves to be seen, not just sold. Make it your own. Make it work for you. You see what others miss. So did I. I didn't cry. I just sat there, letting the weight of the paper settle into my chest. It wasn't just a house. It was belief, legitimacy, a shift in the narrative I had carried for 10 years. I drove out the next weekend, alone. No music, just road noise and silence. The key fit. The lights worked. The house greeted me like it remembered. I stood in the center of the living room as sunlight moved across the wall, and I whispered, "Okay, I'm ready now." I didn't renovate. I restored. I cleaned the windows until they sparkled. I scrubbed the floors myself. I hung my own photographs, details of city corners, reflections in puddles, symmetry and decay. The house didn't need flash. It needed purpose. I turned the guest cottage into a studio, added blackout curtains, a staging corner, built-in lighting grids. I started offering exclusive sessions for high-end clients, interior designers, architects, luxury realtors, people who weren't just looking for pictures, but for an atmosphere. Within 6 months, Coastal Vision Photography tripled its revenue. I hired a full-time editor, then a booking manager. Our clients included Fortune 500 executives, tech founders, and fashion icons. The house paid for itself by the second year. I bought an apartment in Manhattan, small but full of light. I lived between the two, depending on the season. I didn't advertise. I didn't post vacations. I didn't tag locations. I didn't need to. The work spoke for itself. People assumed I came from money. My clients treated me like someone who had always belonged in their world. They never asked where I came from. They saw the address, the website, the clean aesthetic, the testimonials, and they assumed the rest. I let them. Let them believe I had always been this version of myself, elegant, composed, successful. The truth was mine alone, hidden in the quiet corners of the house I hadn't opened to anyone. Sometimes, late at night, I walked the private beach barefoot, letting the sand pull at everything I had, shed shame, doubt, the ghost of being unwanted. I didn't need forgiveness. I needed space. And this house, this quiet, stubborn, beautiful house, had given it to me. Not as a gift, as a recognition. They had erased me, but this house wrote me back in. I hosted no parties, no gallery shows, no industry mixers, just the work, just the craft, just the steady building of a life where I answered to no one. The house kept my secrets, and I kept its walls strong. Have you ever walked into a place and felt, without words, that it saw you? Press 1 if you know that feeling. Press 2 if you're still looking for it. This house wasn't a reward. It was a reply. It said, "You were never the problem. You were just ahead of your time." It started with a notification. I wasn't expecting it. I was reviewing edits from a luxury condo shoot in Tribeca, drinking lukewarm coffee in my Manhattan apartment, when the ping came through from Instagram. Jonathan had posted a photo. I almost scrolled past. I barely checked his profile anymore. His carefully curated images of tailored suits, polished smiles, holiday dinners without methe used to sting. Now they barely registered, but this one stopped me. It was my parents, standing on a beach, arms around each other, wind in their hair. The caption read, "Looking forward to Thanksgiving weekend with the family in the Hamptons. 40 years deserves a proper celebration." At first, it didn't register, just another photo. Another reminder that I wasn't invited. Then I looked closer. The background, the porch railing, the angle of the dunes. I knew that view. I had taken that photo. It was my beach, my property. I clicked again, followed the geotag, traced the listing. Hampton Luxury Estates. That was my property management agency. The one I hired to rent out the house while I traveled. Anonymous contracts, high vetting standards, no personal information ever exchanged. It was clean. Deliberate. I liked the distance. I liked not knowing who was renting. I liked never being known. Until now. I called Angela, the woman who managed my listings. "Can you confirm who's booked the Montauk house next week?" I asked, my voice steady. She checked. "Family of 10. Paid in full. No issues." I swallowed. "That's my family," I said. Silence. Then, "Oh, complicated." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Can we cancel?" I asked. "Legally, yes, but it's late notice. You'd forfeit part of the payment. They could dispute the charge, leave a bad review." I thanked her and hung up. My hand stayed on the phone long after the call ended. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. There was a version of this where I left. Scheduled a shoot in LA. Let them have their perfect Thanksgiving in my house without ever knowing it belonged to me. Let them continue the erasure, uninterrupted. But then I saw it. My mother's post. A caption under a grainy family photo. Just a humble gathering. Nothing extravagant. Just time with those who matter most. Those who matter most. There it was. The erasure. Again. Polite. Painless. Precise. I closed my laptop. I stood up. And I made a decision. I wouldn't cancel. I wouldn't leave. I wouldn't announce anything either. I would wait. I would watch. And when the moment came, I would walk in. Not with rage. Not with grief. With presence. I drove to the beach house 2 days before their arrival, had the security system upgraded, installed cameras in the common space living room, kitchen, deck, not surveillance. Protection. That's what I told myself. I stocked the fridge, arranged the flowers, replaced the sheets. I placed my framed photographs back on the walls where they belonged. Then I waited. The day they arrived, I watched from my studio. I saw the car pull up. My father stepped out first. He always did. He inspected the porch railings, ran his fingers along the deck posts like he was checking for termites. My mother followed, directing the suitcases, adjusting the umbrella angle on the back patio. Amanda arrived next. 3 kids, all loud and blonde and tugging at her dress. Her husband barely looked up from his phone. Jonathan came last, still in a suit, still performing. His wife trailed behind him with perfect posture. The extended family arrived in Wave's cousins, aunts, nieces, nephews. None of them knew. They walked through the house like tourists in a catalog, complimenting the furnishings, admiring the layout, rearranging the very things I had chosen with intention. My mother moved the centerpiece. Again, my father tilted a painting I had hung. Amanda commented that the decor felt less curated than usual. I watched it all. But the moment that cut deepest came just before dinner. My mother opened her leather case of family photos. She always brought them. Frames she set up wherever we stayed, like a shrine to selective memory. I watched her place a photo from a ski trip on the entry table. It was the 5 of us. I was in the photo barely. Off to the side, arms around a younger Zoe. My mother stared at the frame for a long time. Then, slowly, she picked another photo and placed it in front, blocking my face. That was the message. Still unspoken, still brutal, still deliberate. That night, I listened through the system. Dinner conversation, laughter, updates about schools, promotions, cruises. Jonathan talked about a new client. Amanda described a holiday gala. My name was never mentioned. Not once. Not until Zoe spoke. her voice small, curious. "What happened to Aunt Sam?" she asked. The silence that followed was instant, heavy. My mother cleared her throat. "That's not a dinner topic, darling," Zoe persisted. "She was always nice to me." My father's response was surgical. "She made choices. We don't need to revisit them." The conversation moved on, but I stayed frozen. They had walked through my walls, Saturday at my table, slept in my rooms, and still, I was invisible, reduced to a cautionary tale, a memory they had scrubbed clean. I poured a glass of wine, walked to the shoreline, let the night wind wrap around me. I watched the house glow from the inside, warm and occupied. My house, my success, my name erased. Again. And still, I felt no rage, only resolve. Tomorrow I would walk in, not for revenge, for recognition. Have you ever let people step into the world you built knowing they once doubted you could build anything at all? Press 1 if you have. Press 2 if you're still waiting for your moment. Mine was coming, and they wouldn't see it until I stood in front of them. Quiet, unshaken, undeniably real. The next morning I woke before sunrise. I didn't need an alarm. My body was already braced. The kind of bracing you do before surgery, before impact, before confrontation that feels less like war and more like a reckoning. I made coffee the way I always did, strong, dark, simple. No milk, no sugar, just heat and clarity. I drank it standing at the window, watching the tide drag itself across the shore. The house across the Sandme house was waking up slowly. I could see lights flicker on in the kitchen. Someone turned on music. Light jazz, tasteful, forgettable. The kind of sound that fills a room without saying anything. Fitting. I chose my outfit with precision. A black sheath dress, sharp at the collarbone, subtle earrings, hair pulled back into a clean, tight knot, not too formal, not too casual. A look that said, "I belong here, and I don't need you to agree." I didn't wear makeup except for a single coat of mascara and a matte lip. The effect was intentional, controlled, understated, unmissable. I looked like the version of myself they never imagined could exist. I waited until lunchtime. That was the plan. Wait until everyone was gathered. The children would be seated, the food would be served, the cameras would be off, the masks down. I walked across the sand in low heels, each step sinking slightly into the earth. No coat, no bag, nothing to carry. I didn't knock. I opened the door like I lived there because I did. The first thing I heard was laughter, the easy kind, layered and loud, coming from the back deck. I followed the sound through the house, past the hallway where my framed photographs still hung. No one had touched them. They didn't recognize the signature. Or maybe they did and ignored it. I stepped onto the deck without hesitation. The entire family turned as one. Time slowed. Amanda dropped a fork. Jonathan blinked like he was seeing a mirage. One of the kids whispered, "Who's that?" My mother's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered against the deck. My father stood too quickly, the blood draining from his face. For a moment, no one spoke. The wind moved through the open doors. A napkin fluttered. I stepped fully into the space, hands at my sides, posture relaxed. "Hello," I said. My voice was calm, neutral. "I hope you're enjoying the view." No one moved. Amanda found her voice first. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her tone half accusation, half confusion. "How did you get in?" I tilted my head. "I didn't get in," I said. "I live here." Jonathan looked at me like he was trying to decode a message written in a language he didn't speak. "You what?" My eyes scanned the table. "This is my property. I own it. You're staying in my house." I let the sentence land. Quiet, final, no inflection, just fact. My father's jaw tensed. "That's not possible," he said. "We rented this house through Hampton Luxury Estates." I nodded. "Yes, they manage it for me when I travel." My mother sat down heavily. "You own this place?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question wasn't just about the deed, it was about how, when, why. I was about to answer when a blur of motion hit me from the side. Zoe, teenage now, taller, louder, brighter than I remembered. She threw her arms around me and held on tight. "I knew you'd come," she said. Her voice cracked something open in me I hadn't realized was still sealed. I hugged her back. "Look how much you've grown," I said, stepping back to really see her. She smiled, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater. The adults remained frozen. Some stood, some sat. None of them knew what to do with this moment. Aunt Dorothy recovered next. She approached cautiously and kissed my cheek. "You look wonderful, Sam," she said gently. Uncle Paul shook my hand, awkward but sincere. A few cousins waved, unsure whether to smile. I nodded in return. I wasn't here for them. But I wasn't angry with them either. They were bystanders. Complicit, yes, but peripheral. Jonathan approached next. His hug was stiff, more performance than feeling. But his voice cracked slightly when he said, "You look great." Amanda stood beside her husband, her posture tense. She didn't move. "Well," I said, addressing the group, "I didn't mean to interrupt. Please carry on with lunch." Aunt Dorothy gestured to the chair beside her. "There's plenty," she offered. I saw my mother flinch at the invitation. This wasn't her script. This wasn't how family events were supposed to go. I considered retreating, letting them sit with the discomfort, but something in me was done shrinking. "Thank you," I said, sitting. "I'd like that." The conversation that followed was halting. Safe topics. The weather, the beach, compliments on the house. No one looked me fully in the eye except Zoe. She asked questions. I answered them. Told her about the camera, the company, the travel. She asked if I ever got scared. I said, "Every day. That's how I know it matters." At one point, my father broke the rhythm. "Real estate photography?" he said. "That's how you afford this?" His voice carried skepticism wrapped in civility. I met his gaze. "Partly," I replied. "Coastal vision photography has done well. We handle luxury properties across the Northeast, some commercial, some editorial. Clients include celebrities, executives, Fortune 500 brands." I paused. "But this house, this was gifted to me by a mentor who believed in my eye when others didn't." My mother's knuckles whitened around her new wine glass. She didn't speak. Her expression held, but barely. "How fortunate," she murmured. I nodded. "Yes," I said. "It was." The rest of the meal passed in that strange new rhythm. Some laughter, some silence, some shifting of expectations. The kids eventually wandered off to the beach. Conversations broke into small clusters. I gave a brief tour of the main level, marked off rooms that were private, answered questions with restraint. By sunset, I stood alone on the back deck, watching the sky turn pink, then gold, then indigo. I heard the sliding door open behind me. I didn't turn. "Your photography," my father said, stepping beside me. "I looked you up. The Manning estate, the Sullivan renovation. That was your work?" I nodded. "Yes." He was quiet. Then, "Impressive." The word felt foreign in his mouth. Heavy. Before I could respond, he turned and walked back inside. Not validation, not apology, but something. A fracture. A flicker. Have you ever stepped into a room where you were once forgotten and left it unforgettable? Press 1 if yes. Press 2 if you're still waiting to walk in. I stayed on the deck until the stars came out. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel erased. I felt real, whole, seen, on my own terms. That night, long after the wine was gone and the children had gone to bed, I found Jonathan sitting alone in the kitchen. The overhead light cast soft shadows across his face, making him look older, smaller than the version of him I'd carried with me. He was nursing a glass of scotch, the same brand my father favored. His tie was loosened, jacket folded over the back of a chair. He didn't look up when I walked in, but he gestured toward the seat across from him. "Can't sleep?" I asked. He shook his head. "Too much movement in my head," he said. I opened the fridge, took a bottle of water, and sat down. We studied each other quietly, like siblings meeting for the first time after a war where both sides forgot why they started fighting. He spoke first. "They told everyone you had a breakdown," he said, voice flat, "after graduation. That you couldn't handle the pressure. Needed treatment." I didn't react. I had suspected something like that. The Reed family always preferred a controlled narrative. "They said you were recovering, that you'd come back once you got help. Then they stopped mentioning you at all." I nodded slowly. "And you?" I asked. He looked down at his glass. "I let it happen. It was easier that way. Easier for them, easier for me." There was no apology in his tone, just fatigue. "You were the only one who walked away. The rest of us stayed because we didn't know how not to." I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. The truth had already been admitted. He sighed, leaned back. "You want to know why they booked this house?" he asked. I raised an eyebrow. "Wasn't it for the ocean view?" He almost smiled. "That's what they told everyone. But the truth? The company's falling apart. Bad investments. Real estate markets collapsing. Dad's been propping it up with loans and reputation, but it's slipping. They sold the summer house 2 years ago, took out a second mortgage on the main one. They couldn't host Thanksgiving there. It would have shown the cracks." I leaned back in my chair. "So they rented mine instead," I said. He nodded. "They didn't know, Sam. I swear. If they did, they never would have." He trailed off. I processed it slowly. My father always composed, always controlled scrambling behind the scenes while maintaining the facade. My mother posting curated moments to disguise decline. I'd known something was off, but not how deep it ran. "There's more," Jonathan said, almost reluctantly. "Dad collapsed at work last month. Heart issues. He's being treated, but he won't listen. Keeps showing up like nothing happened, won't slow down, won't delegate. He thinks if he steps back, the whole company will fall." I studied my brother's face. He looked tired, not just from the business, from carrying a structure that was never designed to bend. Footsteps in the hallway interrupted us. Amanda stepped into the kitchen in a silk robe, her hair down, her expression unreadable. She paused when she saw me, then crossed her arms. "Family secrets without me?" she said lightly, but her voice held an edge. "Just catching up," Jonathan replied. "Have a seat." She hesitated, then sat beside me. For a moment, the three of us sat like old times, only nothing was like old times. Amanda spoke softly. "Your house is beautiful," she said. "You've done well for yourself." I nodded. "Thank you." She twisted her ring on her finger slowly, like a nervous habit. "It must be nice," she continued, "to have freedom, no expectations, no obligations." I tilted my head. "I built it from nothing, Amanda. Freedom came with a price." Her smile was tight. "At least you got to choose. Some of us followed the plan and still ended up miserable." The words lingered. Raw, unfiltered. She didn't take them back. She didn't need to. I already knew. "Tom's having an affair," she said. "Has been for years. Dad knows. Pretends not to. Because Tom's father is a major investor." Jonathan reached for her hand. She let him. The silence between us was heavier than anger. This wasn't just a family falling apart. This was a structure collapsing under its own refusal to bend. I took a sip of water. "Why stay?" I asked. Amanda gave a bitter laugh. "Prenup. 3 kids. No income. And no version of me that exists outside their design." She looked at me, her eyes rimmed red. "You left before you forgot who you were. I stayed until I couldn't remember who I used to be. I wanted to say something, comforting, defiant, but all I could offer was presence." And sometimes, that's enough. The kitchen door creaked. Our mother stood there, still dressed, perfectly composed. Late night gathering, she said. How nice. The conversation died instantly. Even in our 30s, her presence snapped the air into silence. We were heading to bed, Jonathan said. He stood, nodded, and left. Amanda followed, brushing past our mother without a word. She looked at me, her expression unreadable. You've built something real, she said. I didn't see it before, but I see it now. I didn't respond. She didn't wait. I stayed behind, alone in the kitchen, the quiet humming around me. The empire they once built was crumbling, not because of me, but because no one had the courage to change the foundation, until now. Have you ever watched power slip from those who once held it so tightly only to realize it was never really yours to fear? Press 1 if yes. Press 2 if you're still learning where your strength begins. That night, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, grounded. And for the first time, they felt uncertain. The ground was shifting, and I was already standing still. The next evening, I called a family meeting. Not formally. No printed agenda, no long emails, just a quiet request over dinner. Can we sit in the living room after dessert? I have a few things I'd like to say. The reaction was a mix of curiosity and restraint. My father stiffened slightly, adjusting his cufflinks like he was preparing for a deposition. My mother's eyes narrowed in the way they always did when someone disrupted the schedule. Amanda looked away, pretending not to hear, but no one said no, and that, after everything, was a beginning. We gathered in the living room. The fireplace glowed low. The ocean hissed in the background like a witness. The kids were upstairs, half asleep. The cousins whispered in the kitchen. What remained was the core. My parents, my siblings, a few aunts and uncles, and Zoe, who sat cross-legged on the rug like she was attending a lecture she didn't want to miss. I stood, not out of formality, but because I needed the clarity of posture. I know this week wasn't what anyone expected, I began. And I didn't plan it to be. You rented a house you didn't know belonged to me. I let the reservations stand because I wasn't sure what I wanted until I saw your faces. I let the sentence rest. No one interrupted. I'm not here to demand anything, I continued. Not forgiveness, not apologies, not even understanding. But I do want clarity. If we're going to exist in each other's lives, again on any level, it needs to be real. No more pretending. My mother's lips parted slightly, as if to object, but she stayed silent. I turned to her, to both of them. You erased me. Not in anger, but with intention. You replaced my name with silence. I'm not angry anymore, but I need you to know I noticed. I paused. Let the weight settle. I built a life, I said. Not in spite of you, but beyond you. I'm not asking to be let back in. I don't need that. What I'm offering is this. If we're going to reconnect, we start fresh. We don't pretend the past 10 years didn't happen. We acknowledge the estrangement. We admit what was lost. And we decide each of us what we're willing to rebuild. My father shifted in his seat. That's a large ask, he said. You're proposing a new structure without any foundation. I met his gaze. I'm proposing we stop rebuilding on a foundation that already cracked. Mutual respect. That's the only thing that counts moving forward. Amanda let out a small breath. And if some of us don't want to rebuild? She asked. Her voice wasn't sharp this time, just tired. I nodded. That's your right. I'm not asking anyone to fake connection. I'm just asking for truth. If the only thing we can offer each other is distance, then let it at least be honest distance. Zoe raised her hand, a small, quiet gesture. Does that mean I can still talk to you? I smiled. Yes. In fact, I'd like to offer you something. I looked at my aunt, Zoe's mother. If she's interested, I'd like to mentor her in photography. She has a good eye. I've seen how she watches light. My aunt blinked, caught off guard. She's focused on college prep. I nodded. She can do both. I did. Zoe beamed. My mother cleared her throat. And what does all this look like in practice? She asked. Her voice was composed, but the undertone wasn't. It looks like boundaries, I said. It looks like respect. Maybe that means holiday phone calls, a dinner in the city, a card on birthdays, not out of obligation, out of choice. And if those moments don't come, that's fine too. But no more pretending I never existed. No more reshaping the story to erase the part that doesn't fit. All there. Jonathan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'd like that, he said quietly. To start over, differently. I nodded. Me too. My father said nothing, but he was watching me with something new in his face. Not warmth. Not yet. But recognition. My mother looked down at her hands, then back at me. Your terms are reasonable, she said. We accept. I exhaled. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. But it was alignment. The air in the room shifted. The others murmured small affirmations. Amanda remained silent, but her silence this time wasn't rejection. It was reflection. The group dispersed slowly. One by one, they returned to their corners of the house. Only Zoe remained. She sat beside me on the couch, pulling her knees to her chest. What happens next? She asked. I looked out the window, the moon hanging low over the water. We take it one step at a time, I said, and we build something we choose, not something inherited. She smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. Have you ever drawn a new line with someone not to push them away, but to finally meet on even ground? Press 1 if you have. Press 2 if you're still holding the pen. That night, I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. For the first time in years, I had said exactly what I needed without raising my voice, without asking for permission, without shrinking to fit the room. The lines were redrawn, and this time, I was on my own side of them, by choice, with peace, and without apology. 3 months passed before I heard from my father again. His email arrived early one Monday morning, short and formally worded, like a professional memo disguised as personal outreach. Subject line: Proposal for collaboration. The body read, Samantha, our firm is undergoing a strategic rebrand in an effort to attract new investors and reposition our image in a shifting market. We are in need of new photographic material for our print and digital assets. Your portfolio speaks for itself. Would you be available for a consultation? Standard rates apply, of course. Regards, H. Reed. I sat with that message longer than I care to admit. There were a dozen reasons to delete it. Even more to forward it to my lawyer, but I didn't do either. I closed the email and let it sit. It wasn't the money, though the numbers they eventually offered were generous, far above industry average. It wasn't even about the exposure, though I knew the work would land in magazines and high-profile investor packets. What made me pause was the shift, the tone, the use of my professional worth, uncoded by family dynamics. For the first time in my life, Harold Reed was asking, not dictating, and not as a father but as a client. I replied the next day simply, I'd be willing to meet. We can discuss scope, timeline, and ownership rights. Please have your assistant coordinate with my office. No warmth, no familiarity, only facts. That was intentional. If we were going to engage, it would be on my terms. The meeting was scheduled at their Manhattan headquarters, a tall, cold glass tower with polished floors and receptionists who never blinked. I walked in wearing a black turtleneck, wide-leg trousers, and low heels. I carried no emotion with me, only my briefcase and a quiet certainty. The receptionist directed me to the executive floor without question. The moment I stepped into the conference room, my father stood and offered his hand. I shook it, brief, firm, professional. He introduced the marketing director, a woman named Elena, and the firm's new branding consultant. They laid out their goals, vision, and aesthetic aspirations. I listened. I took notes. I offered input. When the conversation turned to licensing and image rights, I handed them my standard contract. Elena skimmed it. My father didn't flinch. No edits were suggested. No objections, just a nod. Looks good. We scheduled the first shoot for the following week: architectural exteriors, candid office culture, executive headshots. I brought my full team: two assistants, a lighting technician, and my creative producer. We arrived early, scoped the space, adjusted the lighting in the boardroom where I once sat as a child, pretending to understand mergers and quarterly earnings. Now I was directing people who used to overlook me. The first executive I photographed was the CFO, a man who once told me at a Christmas party that photography was a charming hobby for women who marry well. I gave him 3 options for posture, corrected his stance, adjusted his collar, and said, "Hold still." He did. He blinked rapidly. I took the shot. The image was stunning. Cold light across high cheekbones. Authority softened by slight asymmetry. The kind of portrait that says everything and nothing at once. My specialty. The shoot took 3 days. Every angle intentional. Every detail accounted for. I didn't linger. I didn't entertain small talk. I moved with precision, authority, and the quiet power of someone who no longer needed approval. On the final day, my father approached me during a break. He stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching traffic below. "I reviewed the raw files," he said. "They're strong." I nodded. "That's the idea." He paused. "You run a tight ship." I met his eyes. "I always have. You just weren't looking." He didn't argue. He simply said, "Thank you for taking this on." I gave a small nod. I took it because it was business, not family. That landed. He nodded again, slower this time. Understood. 2 weeks later, the firm launched their new website. My photographs headlined every page. My credit was listed clearly. No pseudonym, no omission. Just visuals by Coastal Vision Photography. The investor calls increased. So did press coverage. I got a note from their branding consultant. "They've never looked this human," she wrote. "Your work made them real." A month after that, my mother invited me to lunch. Just us. No cousins. No cousins' children. No performative holiday table. We met at a quiet cafe in the Upper East Side. She wore a structured navy coat and a string of pearls. I wore my usual black, unadorned, deliberate. We sat across from each other. She didn't order, just tea. She stirred it slowly, then looked up. "I saw the photographs," she said. "They're beautiful." I nodded. "Thank you." A pause. "He's proud, you know," she added. "He doesn't say it, but he is." I sipped my coffee. "It's not required." She smiled faintly. "It still matters." There was a silence between us, but not the old kind. Not the cold vacuum meant to erase. This one had space in it, potential. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "This came in the mail. Addressed to the house. It's yours." I opened it. A letter from one of Lisa Montgomery's old associates. An invitation to speak at a real estate design summit in Palm Beach. Headliner, featured speaker, paid. I smiled. "You opened it?" She shook her head. "I recognized your name on the envelope. It felt strange, familiar." She looked away. "I forget sometimes how much you've built." I leaned back, considering her. Not angry, not moved, just clear. "It's not about forgetting," I said. "It's about finally seeing." Have you ever had someone who once dismissed you hire you because they had no other option left? Press 1 if yes. Press 2 if you're still building toward that call. That winter, I added 3 new contracts to my portfolio: hedge funds and a luxury architecture firm, all referrals from the Reed rebrand. My father sent each one with a single line: "Samantha is the best in the business." He signed it with his name, not Dad. That was fine. I didn't need both. What mattered wasn't that they hired me. It was that they didn't ask for a discount. They didn't expect grace. They paid my rate. They signed my contract. They followed my lead. This wasn't revenge. This was balance and business. And this time, I was the one holding the pen. The first Thanksgiving I hosted wasn't planned out of obligation. It was a decision, a quiet one, deliberate. My house, the one they once unknowingly rented, was full of warmth that year. Not the performance warmth of holiday table settings and forced conversations, but something more human, more earned. I sent invitations to people who mattered, some by blood, most by choice. My business partner and his husband. Two of my oldest clients turned friends, a former assistant now running her own photography studio. And, cautiously, I invited my family. Not because I owed them inclusion, but because the lines had been redrawn, and I wanted to see who could walk across without pretending the old map still applied. Not everyone came. Amanda sent regrets, citing scheduling issues. I didn't press. I knew she wasn't ready. Some relatives declined without explanation. That was fine. No room at the table would remain empty. But my mother came. My father, too. Jonathan arrived early, brought wine, and helped set up the deck. Zoe came with a folder of new photographs and an energy that filled the room before she even spoke. She had grown so much in the span of a season, her eye sharper, her confidence unshakable. I introduced her to a designer friend who promised to review her portfolio. Let's find her the right mentor, I said, and meant it. That evening, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt whole, different. Not perfect, but honest. My mother stood beside me in the kitchen at one point, slicing bread with the same precision she used to apply to judgment. She passed me a plate and said, I see it now. Why you left, why you didn't come back. I glanced at her. Her eyes weren't wet, but they weren't cold either. I thought I was protecting you, she continued. From disappointment, from instability. But I was protecting an idea of you, not the real person you were becoming. I nodded. I know. It wasn't an apology, but it was more than silence. My father lingered by the fire pit with my business partner, talking about the photography industry like a man who had done his homework. At one point, he caught my eye across the room, lifted his glass slightly, and mouthed the word, proud. It landed differently than it might have years ago. Not as a lifeline, but as a footnote. Acknowledgement was nice, but no longer required. After dessert, Zoe pulled me aside. I want to show you something, she said. She opened her folder and laid out 6 photographs. They weren't technically perfect. Some were grainy, one was overexposed. But the framing, the emotion was undeniable. She had caught light the way few beginners ever do. I pointed to one photo, a candid of her younger brother peeking through a curtain. This one, I said. You waited for it. She grinned. I did, almost 20 minutes. He didn't know I was there. I smiled. That's the secret, waiting without needing to be seen. Later that night, after everyone had drifted off to guest rooms or into the quiet of the ocean air, I walked the beach alone. The sand was cool, the waves calm. The house glowed behind me, steady and alive. 10 years ago, I left with a camera and $800. No plan, no map, just the decision not to disappear. Along the way, I stopped needing to be proven right. What mattered more was the clarity of self, the understanding that I never had to become what they imagined, that I could build something real without asking permission, that I could belong somewhere starting with myself. I didn't forgive everything. Some wounds weren't meant to be erased. They stayed as reminders of what I overcame, of who I chose to be. But I did let go of the need to explain, to justify, to perform. I let them meet me where I stood, not where they left me. 3 months after that Thanksgiving, Zoe emailed me a photo. She had captured her school courtyard at dawn, the benches still empty, a lone bird in flight across the frame. The subject wasn't obvious, but the emotion was. I waited 30 minutes in the cold, she wrote. I wanted to see what no one else saw. I replied, you're on the right path. Keep waiting. I continued the business, expanded the team, added a second location in upstate New York. My clients evolved. My confidence didn't waver. Occasionally, my mother sent articles she thought I'd enjoy. Sometimes my father forwarded referrals. Jonathan and I had lunch once a month. Amanda sent a holiday card. No more, no less. The balance held. Family, I realized, wasn't defined by surnames or shared dinners. It was built, intentionally, slowly, with boundaries, with grace, with truth. I wasn't the black sheep. I wasn't the lost child. I was the architect of my space, of my peace, of my presence. And the house mine still stood exactly where it always had, quiet, strong, a reminder that some places choose you before you're ready. They wait, they hold. And when the time comes, they let you return not as who you were, but as who you've become. Have you ever stopped needing to be let in and started creating the place where others ask to join you? Press 1 if yes. Press 2 if you're still building that place. I built mine, on Kiet, on Courage, on my terms, and I never looked back. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is say nothing at all. This story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong with anger or noise. It was about choosing yourself when no one else did. About building something real from silence, holding your ground, and letting your presence speak louder than any confrontation ever could. If you've ever been pushed aside, made to feel invisible, treated like your dreams didn't matter, you're not alone. And if despite all of that, you stood up quietly and kept going, that is a kind of strength no one can take from you. Have you ever had to rebuild yourself in silence after being underestimated? Type 1 if this story resonated with you. Type 2 if you've lived a version of it. And if you feel like sharing, drop a comment below. Your story might be the reminder someone else needs today. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is simply, I'm still here. And I never needed your permission.